This is Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the President of Germany, a figure perhaps not widely known to the general public. In contrast, this is Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor. Almost everyone knows him because he holds the reins of power, managing the country's affairs and making all key decisions. There are many similar examples where the Prime Minister or Chancellor runs the country, while the nominal head of state, such as the President of Italy or the King of England, serves merely as a figurehead. This actually addresses a question from one of our channel's followers. Why is it that in some countries the Prime Minister handles all state affairs rather than the actual head of state? To understand why the Prime Minister holds the reins of power in some countries, whereas in others, like the United States, it is the President, we need to look at the three main systems of government. First, the parliamentary system, found in countries like Italy and Germany. Second, the presidential system, as seen in the United States. And third, the semi-presidential system, like that of France. Let's start by discussing the parliamentary system. In this system, citizens elect members of parliament who represent various political parties. Once the results are in, the party that secures the majority of parliamentary seats, thereby gaining the public's confidence, selects one of its members to be appointed Prime Minister. The advantage here is that the Prime Minister is an individual who has earned the trust of both the majority of the public and the majority of Parliament. As long as Parliament continues to support this individual, they remain in office as Prime Minister. They hold the authority to manage the country's affairs across all sectors, including the political, economic, and military spheres, as well as all matters concerning the nation's people. At this point, dear viewer, a question might cross your mind. If the Prime Minister holds all this power, managing the country's affairs and sectors, then what exactly are the duties of the actual president or the monarch? To answer this in the best way possible, I want you to picture two figures. One who rolls up his sleeves and works diligently to look after his people, leading a team as they carry out their assigned tasks, and another who wears an elegant suit, signs the laws enacted by the first man and his aides, receives guests, attends international ceremonies, and so on. In short, the president, in a parliamentary system, serves as a dignified figurehead, standing above political disputes and conflicts to maintain the enduring respect of the people, while also carrying out routine duties and upholding the state's customs and traditions. Conversely, matters concerning the public, such as conflicts, crises, and wars, fall under the purview of the Prime Minister, who is responsible for resolving them and is held accountable for his decisions by both the Parliament and the people. As for the second system, the presidential system, it is completely different. In this system, the president is elected by the people and wields significant authority within the country. He appoints ministers and determines state policies. He also serves as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Consequently, there is no prime minister, or, if the position does exist, its role is limited to implementing the president's decisions rather than carrying out the parliament's vision, as is the case in the parliamentary system previously mentioned. In a presidential system, there is a clear separation of powers. The parliament holds its own authority, and the president holds his. Consequently, the parliament cannot easily remove the president from office. The only way for this to happen is through formal removal, a rare occurrence, as it requires compelling grounds such as treason, gross negligence in managing the country's affairs, the commission of a major crime, or a violation of the Constitution. Because such removals are infrequent, power tends to be concentrated more heavily in the hands of a single individual, the president. Finally, there is the semi-presidential system. It is a system that combines elements of both parliamentary and presidential systems. It adopts the strengths and stability of the presidential system, while simultaneously maintaining the checks and balances and participatory nature of the parliamentary system. France is the most prominent example of a country that employs this system. In a semi-presidential system, the people directly elect the president, which grants the president the popular mandate and confidence needed to lead the country. However, the president does not govern alone. There must be a prime minister and a government, and the government requires a vote of confidence from the parliament. If the parliament belongs to the same party as the president, it is an ideal scenario for him, as he wields greater authority with their backing. But if an opposition party gains control of the parliament, The president is compelled to appoint a prime minister and ministers from that opposition party, forcing them to work together, a situation that occurs frequently. In this system, the president focuses on foreign affairs and the military, while the prime minister concentrates on domestic matters such as education, healthcare, the economy, agriculture, and other internal issues. The key advantage of this arrangement is the balance and division of responsibilities it creates. Even if the country faces instability in its foreign relations, or if the president is preoccupied with external matters like wars, there is simultaneously a prime minister dedicated to domestic affairs and the welfare of the people. This serves the best interests of both the public and the nation by ensuring that attention is paid to both areas at the same time. Another benefit is that it prevents the concentration of absolute power in the hands of a single individual, thereby maintaining a balance of authority. Now that we understand the differences between systems of government, a question has likely crossed your mind. How and why did these systems come about? If we look back at history, we see that these systems did not evolve overnight. The parliamentary system in its current form originated in Britain, the very place that gave us the concept of parliaments. The process began as British monarchs gradually lost power to the nobility and statesmen. This shift culminated specifically in 1721 with the emergence of history's first de facto prime minister, Robert Walpole. At that time, King George V did not speak English well, being of German origin, so he delegated the task of chairing ministerial meetings and representing him before Parliament to Walpole. This gave rise to the concept that the monarch reigns but does not rule, with actual executive authority shifting to the prime minister, who would subsequently derive his legitimacy from Parliament. The office of Prime Minister became the link between the monarch and the cabinet, eventually evolving into the role of the country's de facto ruler. This marked the first parliamentary system in modern history. Subsequently, Commonwealth nations and countries formerly under British rule adopted and implemented this system. Examples include India, Australia, and Canada, all of which rely on a parliamentary system of government. Additionally, certain European nations, discontent with the concentration of power in a single individual, emulated the British model, but adapted it into a republican framework. They replaced the monarch with a president who holds a largely ceremonial and symbolic role, while executive authority rests with the prime minister. Germany was among the first nations to adopt a parliamentary system following the events of World War II. A conflict driven by Hitler's ambition to dominate Europe and the world, which resulted in economic collapse and widespread hardship for the population. When the new German constitution was drafted after the war, the primary objective was to prevent the re-emergence of a leader with absolute authority over the nation's affairs. Consequently, the role of the president was made largely ceremonial. Actual executive power rests with the prime minister, chancellor, who is constrained by the party system, given that it is rare for a single party to secure an absolute majority in Germany. Italy adopted the same system following the period of oppression endured under previous fascist rule. On the other hand, the United States is the primary proponent of this system in the modern era. The presidential system is an American innovation. When the Americans gained independence from Britain, they harbored a strong aversion to monarchy. At the same time, they sought a strong leader to unite the states, yet one subject to term limits and elections to ensure he would not become a king. They replaced the office of prime minister with that of vice president, a role in which duties are assigned by the president. Many nations that subsequently gained independence from colonial rule in Africa, Asia, and Latin America opted for the presidential system, as it championed liberation and democratic elections, precisely what those countries needed at the time. The final system is the semi-presidential model, the most recent of the three. It was first implemented in France in 1958, following the collapse of more than 20 governments in just 12 years. General Charles de Gaulle stepped in and decided to create a new system that combined the strong presidency found in the American model with the role of a prime minister accountable to Parliament. This arrangement provided the state with a strong leader to steer it through crises, while also ensuring there was an official responsible for upholding parliamentary norms. Many countries admired this system of government used in France and decided to implement it themselves. Ultimately, every system has its pros and cons. No single system is superior to another in every respect. Each system emerged during a period when the country's people needed that specific form of governance, following certain crises. The key to a system's success lies in how it is implemented. Specifically, the fairness and equality applied during that process. That explains the difference between countries sharing the same system, where one succeeds while the other does not. Don't forget to let us know what question you'd like us to answer in the next episode.